All right. My name is Kira. I'm the liaison officer for the Ability Co-op. We are a student-led disability advocacy group in Trinity. We're closely linked with the Disability Service. And today I'm going to be just doing a little bit of society training for how to make your events accessible, how to make your engagement accessible via social media, all that type of thing. What I want to do is encourage you that if you have any questions, any specific events you want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of, send us an email. So it's abilitycoop@gmail.com. And we'll get back to you there. If you want to set up a little meeting, we can do a little talk. Now, bear in mind that we are all volunteers, so it can take a minute, but we do try our best, and we are all students. So yeah, all right. Um, so I'm going to start briefly. We're just going to go through a couple of different types of disability and how they can be accommodated for. This list is not exhaustive. It would take me hours to go through everything, but I'm just trying to cover the basics. But first, I want to emphasize that the key thing that we're trying to encourage is if you're doing something to make your accessible, just tell us. Just tell us. Our event is wheelchair accessible, or our event is not wheelchair accessible. Because if you set a precedent of telling people, being transparent, we know that we can turn up to the door and we won't get awkwardly told, actually, this event isn't safe for you, or actually, you can't come in. And we know that we won't have to go, oh, I probably won't be able to go. I guess I just won't show up, when actually we could have gone. So it's really important that you just tell us. And the key thing that we're trying to do here is after the session, we'll send you over a checklist and you can just go, okay, this bit we've done, this bit we haven't done. And that's okay. It's okay to say you haven't done some bits. If you try and do one or more things to make your events more inclusive, that's amazing. But we're not over here trying to say you can't do an event if it's not perfectly accessible. We understand that there are restrictions. All right, so I'm going to start with a visual impairment. So just a couple of things. So alt text for images, posts. So if you're standing up to speak saying, so for example, I'll do it for myself. My name is Kira. I have short brown hair, and I am wearing a brown checkered shirt. Something like that. Um, so yeah, so you might describe yourself, might describe your appearance. What you might say is something like, on the screen, there is a light purple background with a cartoon image of an eye and the words visual impairment, and the Ability Co-op logo is in the corner. Something like that. So it's called alt text, alternative text, and it's just basically telling people what they see. It's like subtitles, but for visual stuff. All right. The other thing I want to mention briefly is how to handle service dogs. And the answer basically is do not. Do not talk to them. Do not engage with them. They are working, they are busy, they're doing an important job, and please do not distract them. All right, so I'm going to move on to hearing impairments. So, okay, what we would encourage is if you're having an online meeting, please use Teams instead of Zoom because they caption meetings automatically. And yeah, that's a really simple thing that you can do, and it makes all the world of difference. It's worth noting as well that a hearing impairment doesn't have to be deaf. You can still hear some things. You might be able to hear clearly. You might be completely deaf. You might have trouble. You might have an auditory processing disorder, so you might have trouble processing the words even though you can hear clearly. So it's not black and white. You might know someone has a hearing difficulty even though they do, and it's good to have captioning just in case someone gets a little bit lost. It's makes everything a lot easier. The other thing is if you were having live streams, to have YouTube over Instagram. So Instagram Live doesn't have captioning, whereas YouTube does. So it's just a simple thing, it's free. Even if you're posting your videos after you live stream them, it's easier on YouTube. They're already just going up so easy. We're really hoping that more people will do that. Then the other thing is to get in touch with Trinity 2 weeks before you have a decently big event, because you can get an ISL interpreter, Irish Sign Language interpreter, paid for by Trinity. You just have to tell them 2 weeks in advance. Um, so as you can tell, I'm kind of running through this. I'll send the checklist over afterwards and you'll get a better idea. But I hope this is all clear so far. We'll have questions at the end. All right, so we're going to run through neurodiversity. So that just means that your brain works a little bit differently. So people have an idea of neurodiversity just being autism, but it isn't. It can be things like epilepsy, mental health disorders, autism, ADHD, anything like that. So I have a long list of things for this because neurodiversity is so broad in what it entails. So something that you might be familiar with is a respite space. So it's just a quiet space with dimmed lighting, and they might have some fidget toys or something calming to do. And it's just so that if people get a bit overwhelmed, they can retreat somewhere quiet and relax. And it's all good. Trinity has a couple around the place, so you might just be able to highlight where they are closest to you, or if you're able to set one up for yourselves, that would be fabulous. The other thing that you can do is just have outside. Outside is like a big respite space a lot of the time. So just encourage people that if you need a minute, you can step outside, the door's open, you're allowed to move in and out of the event. That's perfect. That's so easy. And the other thing is, you'll see in this picture, there's a sunflower lanyard. So that just means that I have a hidden disability. That's all it means. So it might mean to some people, it means something like be a bit more patient with me. To some people, it's just letting you know. It depends. But it just gives you a bit of an awareness so that if someone is wearing this lanyard, they have a hidden disability. Oftentimes that does entail neurodiversity, but not always. Then another thing is if you're posting something, or even if you're saying something, but less likely, more in written, you can use a tone indicator. So that would be like /S, and that would mean sarcasm, or /J, and that would mean joke. And that's just because some people, the tone goes a bit over their head, don't really understand what was happening, and might get very confused or very frustrated. So oftentimes the shorthand is /S, but just /sarcasm really helps people to understand what's going on and include people in the conversation. All right, the next thing is a wayfinding video. So the Disability Service has loads of these on their Instagram. What they are is you stand somewhere well known, like front square, and you film yourself, so you film what you can see, walking to the room that you're in, that the event will be in. And you can speed this up, and it's an easier way of directions. So instead of saying you go left after 100 meters, you can see what it looks like when you're about to turn left. And that just makes everything so much easier for people. It's also way less intimidating if you're starting at college because Trinity campus is so big, it gets stressful. But yeah, that's something that you can kind of do to make people go to your event, even if they're nervous of what it might look like, if they're nervous of how they might get there, everything like that. The other thing is photos of key people with their names. So this is so simple. So you'll notice on our Ability Co-op thing we have on our Instagram, we have this is Kira, we have a picture of my face, we have my name and my title. And that just means that if someone is a little bit nervous about, oh, how am I going to find someone I need to speak to? What happens if I need to report an equity thing? Okay, well, I have a picture of the equity officer, I know what they look like, I can go up to them and find it. I don't have to go, oh, sorry, does anyone know who the equity officer is? Because that draws attention and it's just uncomfortable. It also means that if people are a little bit nervous with names, they can run over it a few times beforehand, which is quite handy. The other thing then is name tags. So simple. But we really encourage name tags just because it makes everything a bit easier, it makes communication a little bit easier, and it's a little bit more engaging and friendly if you have your first name on your shirt. All right. So then I mentioned this briefly before, but just easy to move out in and out of the main space. So you don't necessarily need a respite room to go to, but if there's just, it's easy enough that you can step out. So you might even say at the start of the event, if you're considering moving in and out during the event, we welcome that. We just encourage you to sit in the back couple of rows. That sort of thing is perfect. Absolutely brilliant. Just means that people don't have to be so nervous of, what if I disrupt the event? Also means in something like a speaker event where there's multiple speakers, you might say, you are welcome to move freely in and out of the space. We just encourage to do so between speeches so that we don't interrupt specific people. That's so perfect. Absolutely. Now, if someone's speech is 20 minutes long, you might have to relax that a little bit. But generally, if they're like 5-10 minute speeches, just we encourage you to step out between speeches if you're moving in and out within the event, between the event. Sorry. All right, so that is that. Let me just check my notes. Oh yeah, so the other thing is just most events do this anyway, but just highlight how questions can be asked. So you might have certain people to go to for all questions, or you might have questions about people. Just be very, very clear about that. The main thing is to just keep as many unknowns. Like there has to be some unknowns in an event, right? No one knows how everything is going to go. But if you can keep that to a minimum, ideal. Absolutely perfect. All right. So the other thing is to share pictures of the same event from last year. So that really keeps unknown to minimum. So what if I'm really nervous? So if I have an anxiety disorder per se, and I'm nervous about the event and I don't know what to wear, and I see pictures from last year and I kind of get the idea of what people are wearing. That could make someone feel so much more calmer, and it's just a nice way to kind of show people what they're getting themselves into. The key thing as well is that people might be looking out for these videos to see if there are a whole load of people in a cramped space, okay, that's not very accessible, something like that. So you might need to highlight, we're changing this bit, we're changing this bit to make it more accessible, or if it's not, you can highlight, as you can see, the room is small and there's a lot of people, so it will likely be loud. Perfect, absolutely perfect. So the other thing is post a rough schedule. Just say, so we're planning on arriving at like 10, then we're going to start speaking at 11, we'll go for lunch at 12, be back at 1 for another speech. Brilliant. It doesn't have to be exact. People are not going to ring you up on, is you're 3 minutes behind schedule? No. But if you just give people a rough idea of what's happening when, let people know if you're running behind, stuff like that, it just really calms people down and lets people know this part's accessible for me, this part isn't. I'll go to this part and then I'll have to leave because that won't suit me. That's perfect. The other thing is minutes meetings, or meeting minutes. So if you are holding a meeting, just summarize it afterwards. This is very standard practice, but it's a little bit less standard in student societies because we're all super busy, lots to do. We mightn't have the time to wrap it up. We might think, oh, everyone's been here, it's fine. But even if someone's been there, they might like to look over the notes afterwards. They might have trouble concentrating in an overstimulating environment. So that could be really helpful, just to be able to summarize it, send it to everyone, and then communication's all clear, and also it's really accessible. All right, now I'm finally moving on to the next disability, which is chronic illness, which is very broad. So I'm going to explain, first of all, the icons that I have on the slide. So you'll see a person who's just tired, and oftentimes chronic illness, the thing that kind of unites everyone with chronic illness is that just tiredness and pain. So that's something to consider. So you don't need to know the intricacies of someone's chronic illness. Oftentimes you won't. They're complicated, they're dynamic, they change day to day, person to person. You can't know that. But if you just consider that this person might be very tired, or this person might be in a lot of pain, and consider it like that, that's a much more holistic and welcoming approach. The other thing is, as you can see under it, someone might be perfect. Chronic illness does change very much day to day. They might be having a great day. They could be just as up to it as you are. You might have been out drinking the night before and you might be way more tired than they are. Don't assume that someone can't do something just because they couldn't do it the day before. Chronic illness doesn't work like that. The other thing is they might have to take medication, and so I've just put that there just to be aware that people might need water, need to step outside, want to take medication in private. So something like, we don't accept small bags, or what are you doing with your hands in your pockets? Not appropriate. People deserve privacy when they're taking their meds. The other thing is you'll notice a spoon. That might be confusing, and I 100% accept that, but I wanted to explain it because I wanted to kind of give you an insight into some of the like lingo, some of the language that we use for disability. So it's used mostly in chronic illness and mental health disorders, but also in neurodivergence. And so autism, ADHD, epilepsy, all that kind of thing. So a spoon. So the idea is that you might start your day with 10 spoons, and it might take 2 spoons to brush your teeth. So you're just choosing how you spend your energy based on the amount that you have. And you might start with less spoons than someone else, or activities might take more spoons for you than someone else. So it's just a way of visualizing how much energy you have in the day and how you're choosing to spend that. And it lends to a nice comparison between chronically ill people and not chronically ill people, between I have 10 spoons today, I have 20 spoons today, and this is how we're choosing to spend them. And it's a nice way to understand that people are spending their time the best way that they can. And just because someone doesn't seem to be putting in a lot of effort, they might be putting in all of their energy for that day. So it's really nice to be empathetic about that. So in terms then of practical supports, mostly around chronic illness, because it's very diverse, I'll be just talking about disease prevention. So if possible, a HEPA filter is amazing. So they take disease particles, or I'm not a scientist, they stop disease things being in the air Um, so yeah, that's just reduces the chance of everyone getting sick. So things like COVID, but also things like a flu can be very damaging if you have an already compromised immune system. So also simpler than a HEPA filter because that can be expensive, it can be complicated, I understand that. But just keep your windows open. Just let air in. It keeps everyone a little bit safer, keeps everyone a little bit more alert. And it's one of those things that it benefits people with disabilities, but it also benefits just everyone, just to keep everyone healthy. The other thing is if masks are possible, that would be advisable, but there are pros and cons to masks in different situations. So it's worth at least advertising whether your event is masked or not. Then I will move on to physical disability. So this one might be more self-explanatory. It's what we tend to think of when we think of disability. So is your event wheelchair accessible? Now, there is something that's a little bit more unusual. I only learned this recently, but you need both a ramp and stairs for it to be considered fully accessible. So the general idea is that if you have a ramp, everyone can go up the ramp. But certain type of walking sticks don't do well with an inclined surface, so stairs can actually be more accessible for people with distinct types of walking sticks. I find that very interesting. The other thing is if you're putting things up on shelves, you're putting food up, you have posters up, remember that your eye line is not, or your line of sight is not the same for everyone. So if you can't reach it sitting down, you can't see it sitting down, it's too high. Um, that's just a nice kind of easy way of eyeballing is something accessible. Um, Now I am just about finished. So I'm going to summarize again so that what I want to emphasize is just to advertise what part of your event is accessible. Does it comply with these? Does it not? Both are very worthwhile in saying. The other thing that you can do is an anonymous form to request a reasonable accommodation. So I'm thinking of going to your event. If I go to your event, will there be X accommodation available for me? That's a really nice thing for someone to be able to say, and it's a really good way of getting new people into your organizations. So it's all about communication, empathy, and then equity. So you'll see the little design at the bottom. We're not trying to make disabled people have an easier time. We're just trying to even out a little bit so that they can participate just as much as everyone else can. So if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email them to abilitycoop@gmail.com. So my name is Kira and I'm the liaison officer. Um, so one of us will be getting back to your emails. Thank you for listening, and I hope you run some fabulous society events throughout the year. I'm looking forward to attending.